Is the bullying of Violet Temple ever going to end? Will Violet find a way to end Sandy's wrath? This is a terrifying tale about a heartless bully who went too far, and the courage of a young girl who battled one of the most feared creatures on Earth. Stay to the end to witness Violet's ultimate triumph. Welcome to the Spinethrills channel, where your nightmares come true. Violet Temple had always felt like an outsider at Cypriar High School in her small Texas town. Every morning, she hoped the school bus would break down or get a flat tire, anything to avoid another day of torment from Sandy Watts. Why was Sandy bullying her? What made Violet a target? Maybe it was her gangly frame, oversized feet, and freckled pale skin beneath a mop of tangled red hair. Or perhaps it was her wide, emerald green eyes that drew envious glares from girls like Sandy. "They're just jealous of your beautiful eyes," Grandma would say. But Violet knew jealousy often bred cruelty. The last few years, Sandy and her boyfriend Buster Bonner had made it their obsession to ambush Violet. They'd drag her kicking and screaming to the darkest corners of the old school and ridicule her. At first, Violet had cried uncontrollably, but over time, she realized laughing off their foolish pranks robbed them of the reaction they wanted. Still, she sensed Sandy's viciousness intensifying each time Violet refused to break. Violet's one solace was music. It had always been her passion, her escape from the chaos of a hard home life and stress at school. Her violin filled the silence left by her parents fighting. It eased her heartbreak after Thad Bro dumped her before last year's dance, likely with Sandy's influence. As the bus slowed to a stop, Violet smiled, thinking her first classes were band and music appreciation. She would play until her fingers bled. But she made a mental note to watch her back this year. Sandy's cruelty had become more sinister, and Violet sensed she might be capable of worse than ever. The unexpected blow knocked Violet senseless. When she came to, she felt herself being dragged into the suffocating darkness. Sandy's familiar cackle echoed as Violet tumbled down a flight of stairs, landing with a sharp crack of her wrist. The door slammed shut overhead. "This year will be epic, Violet, if you survive," Sandy called down mockingly. Violet forced a laugh, trying to deny Sandy the satisfaction. "I'll be laughing even harder when karma comes back around to you." Sandy's stomping footsteps faded into the distance. Violet's wrist throbbed as she dug her phone out of her pocket. Luckily, Sandy had forgotten to take it from her. Violet tried to stay calm, deciding that if she couldn't get out of the basement on her own, she'd call for help. But her confidence dropped when she realized there was no cell reception. Just as she prepared to get up, a bone-chilling hiss echoed in the dark. It was only inches away from where she was sprawled on the floor. Though she'd never encountered a snake before, the sound was unmistakable. It continued hissing, smelling her with its tongue, deciding whether to strike. Violet froze, pulse racing. She knew her best defense from a snake was to stay perfectly still. Mr. Wadsworth, her biology teacher, had taught a class on snakes last year. He said they hiss when they're afraid, annoyed, or upset. Oh, she prayed it would leave her alone. But a moment later, she felt a cold, muscular body slide in slow motion across her ankles. Violet tried not to breathe, for fear the slightest movement would threaten it. Agonizing minutes passed before the serpent moved away. She needed to get to her feet and find a way out of the basement. Ever so slowly, she positioned her phone out in front of her and turned on the flashlight app. Triangular-shaped heads with long, slinking bodies surrounded her from every direction. There were at least a dozen venomous pit viper snakes. She gasped in shock as the sound of hissing intensified. Her mind raced, searching for an escape route. Then she heard the dreaded rattle near her feet. She adjusted the light slightly and saw its tail flicking. It flattened its head, widening its body a few inches down its back. It looked big, menacing, and bloodthirsty. If she moved in the slightest, she'd get bitten. If she didn't move, the snakes would eventually bite her anyway. She simply couldn't sit here, doing nothing to save herself. The snake appeared to have read her thoughts and wouldn't let her get away. It lifted much of its body off the ground and expanded the size of its head even more. It looked like some terrifying creature from a horror movie. As it mocked her, she heard the slithering hisses of other snakes moving closer. Suddenly, it put its head down, looked at her squarely with beady black eyes, and attacked. She felt its painful strike pierce the calf of her left leg. Violet screamed instinctively, then tried to muffle the sound and scrambled to her feet. Her movement sent some snakes into hiding in the dark corners of the room, but others were angry and defensive, seeming to pursue her. Violet felt another strike on her right leg as she staggered toward the stairs. She stumbled, fell on one knee, and cried out as a snake bit deep into her arm. She dropped her phone and was, once again, in inky pitch blackness as the flashlight switched off. With loud, wailing sobs, Violet clumsily pawed at the floor, trying to find her only source of light. She'd given up trying not to move, but she needed to see to save herself. Another set of fangs sliced at her hand, pumping toxic venom into her veins. The prick of a bite to her neck sealed her fate. She couldn't survive such a horrifying snake attack. She knew she was going to die. That left only one thing for her to do: give Sandy Watts what she had coming. Though it felt like only minutes, Violet had been suffering through the ordeal for over an hour already. Fiery pain seared through her body as she snatched up her phone and scrambled in desperation up the stairs. Using the flashlight again, she looked down in horror at the puncture wounds all over her body, already ringed by swelling and oozing blood. The agony was unbearable, radiating up her legs, arms, and neck. She had little time. Violet used her good hand to fumble with the doorknob. It was locked. She pounded on it frantically, yelling for help, while already feeling the venom's paralyzing effects take hold. She slid down the door, her vision beginning to blur as the angry hisses withdrew into the darkness below. Nausea washed over her in waves, and she vomited on the steps. Violet's heart slammed against her ribs, pulse rapid and erratic. Her breathing came in short, labored gasps as her lungs struggled to take in air. A metallic taste filled her mouth, and her muscles twitched as they began to fail. This was an excruciating and frightening way to die. She turned on the video app on her phone, pressed record, and slowly panned her grotesquely bloated body, revealing each of the bite marks. As she did so, her anguished voice told the awful tale. A tragic story about years of bullying, no one willing to help, and Sandy Watts' irrevocable act of torture. When she was done, Violet turned the camera and scanned the room. A dozen snakes slithered and hissed. "Buster Bonner's snakes," she said into the video. She could feel herself failing fast. With a brief sob, she worked up the courage to finish the message. "Sandy Watts and Buster Bonner are murderers." She wiped at her tears and took an aching breath. "I always liked this poem, Miss Grant taught us in American Lit class. It's by Edgar Allan Poe, and it's called A Song of Triumph. The poem is about the power of the human spirit and how you can overcome frightening or difficult experiences. I feel triumphant because I have led you to my killers, and they will pay for taking my life away from me." Violet recited the poem softly. Who is king but Epiphanes? Say, do you know? Who is God but Epiphanes? Say, do you know? There is none but Epiphanes. No, there is none. So tear down the temples and put out the sun. Then, with great effort, Violet saved the video and emailed it to her parents, her best friend, and Shari, the school counselor. Shari was the only one who tried to help her with Sandy's bullying. After a satisfied sigh, and with a delirious smile on her face, Violet slumped against the door, her battered body racked with convulsions as the venom pushed her into death's embrace. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have a true story that is scary, creepy, or horrifying, which is well written, and you would like me to share, send the story to spinethrills@gmail.com.